what I'm going to do is talk about James Joyce, and what you'll also be familiar was there was another vision builder, or vision builders, which was W.B. Yeats and Lady Gregory, and what James Joyce actually hated what they were focused on, which was the ignorant peasantry and snobbish aristocracy, because Lady Gregory had gone down and collected the folklore from what was could be called the peasantry. Now, one of the things that had happened post-famine was the emergence of a middle class. And actually, during the famine years, the peasantry had gone down by 40%, and it was going to go down by another 40% in the next 60 years. So there was a huge decline of the peasantry, and actually an emergence of a bourgeoisie or a middle class. And connected with that was a shift in the Irish agriculture from a pastoral potato economy, which you'll all be very familiar with in the excellent presentation that Tom did on the famine, a pastoral and arable economy or agriculture, to very much more based on cattle in the middle class. Now, the English or British were very into eating beef. So there was a huge market of exporting beef to England. And in fact, in James Joyce's Ulysses, at one stage, he talks about these herds of cattle being kind of shooed through Dublin. You can imagine the scene of herds of cattle on the way to the boats to Liverpool to feed the Brits in beef. And indeed, there was a suggestion that a nation is, this is what the Brits framed it as, a nation is what it eats. And clearly a nation eating big hunks of beef was a superior nation to one that was tucking into the potato. So essentially, the famine accelerated the demise of the peasantry. Now, so we have the Yeatsian vision. We've kind of heard the McQuaid and de Valera vision. Another very powerful one was the Yeats, which was both kind of an aristocracy meets the peasant. And one of Yeats's argument was that the peasant was sort of open and susceptible to storytelling. Now, Joyce was having absolutely nothing of this. He couldn't stand this Yeatsian image. And he basically was focused on this new bourgeoisie, this middle class. And he was also hugely interested in the power of popular culture. So if Yeats was into Nobel Prize winning poetry, and Lady Gregory was into connecting the folklore of the ages, what Joyce was into was the middle class. And by the way, did I turn on the recording? Let me just see. Yes, I did. Sorry. So, who was James Joyce's great hero? Who was the main protagonist? Now, rather to the delight of Donal and myself, he was a grubby ad man, a Jewish seller of advertising space. So to kind of look down your nose at was this humble hero, Leopold Bloom. And in a way, it's in making him the hero, it's also kind of privileging the power of advertising. And of course, his wife was Molly Bloom, who was having an affair with Blazes. So not only was he a grubby seller of advertising space, he was someone whose marriage life was hardly a success either. So the humble hero. This is no great Cuchulainn or Finn McCool, or someone who can take on 150 people. This was a guy selling advertising space in the Farmer's Journal. And I think what that does actually is it elevates. Joyce had no time for heroism. It elevates the ordinary, the humble hero. And and this is what, so essentially what we've got is the emerging bourgeoisie, and the emerging bourgeoisie had a few bob in their pocket. And so one of the things that they could then do was spend it. This is the rural bourgeoisie. And so that would have created a whole raft of shops all over the country and all over the rural area, and pubs too. And for the first time, there was some prosperity. There was also moves to enable this bourgeoisie to purchase their land. And in 1903, there was the Wyndham Land Purchase Act, and 11 million acres were now owned by the Irish. I have a feeling that they were so guilty because of some of the stuff that was coming out about the famine in some of their periodicals that they changed their policy. But anyway, James Joyce, rather than focus on the Abbey Theatre or storytelling or plays, Joyce's fiction consistently asserts that what is disposable, insignificant, ephemeral, dead or forgotten may especially influence our sense of reality and self more profoundly than those objects, texts, and images that have been designated as worthy representatives of eternal truth. And within popular culture, what he was particularly interested in was advertising. And this constitutes a dynamic force every bit as influential on Joyce as, say, the works of Thomas Aquinas, Dante, Shakespeare, or Giordano Bruno, according to one commentator, Gary Leonard. So what I'm going to do is to take you through some of the ads that he was particularly interested in. And one of the, two particular ones was the emergence of a latent tourism industry, which, by the way, if we go back to the mythological cycle, was one of the industries of hospitality mentioned in the mythological cycle in relation to the Partholonians, who you will recall came up with three industries: brewing, agriculture, and hospitality, which surely means tourism. So at the same time, there was the railways being built and the great southern hotels. And I remember growing up after India in Kenmare, and one of the great hotels was the Great Southern in Kenmare, which would have been at the end of the railway line. And there would have been hotels in Park Nasilla and in Killarney and in other parts of the country. And there was also a railway line built to Clifton, and to, what's that hotel there that Dennis O'Brien owns? So that was one big area, the emergence of a tourism industry. The other big area was hygiene and soap. And I worked for many years as an advisor to Unilever, and they particularly had Sunlight soap as one of their products. It's a brand, it's still around, and it's about 150 years old. And basically what that would have been to do with is cleaning. Now, bear in mind that one of the unpleasant cliches of the English in relation to the Irish was that the Irish were dirty. So the selling of hygiene products clearly was something targeted in dealing with this social put down. By the way, it was exactly the same was the sales strategy in the UK and indeed all around the world, which you could say is part of a colonial agenda. But if you read the Lord Lever's books, what he framed it as is bringing hygiene to people to ensure that there were less childbirths. You probably also remember, if you're a Joycean, Plumtree's potted meat, and your home, it was suggested, is incomplete, but with it becomes an abode of bliss. If you eat Plumtree's potted meat, and it's a rather nice, attractive container there that gives a sort of elevated status to what doesn't exactly sound too attractive, potted meat. So, but you can begin to see the emergence of a latent marketing strategy. Now, the two things here that we're dealing with is marketing to people's fears. And here we see an ad in one of the journals or magazines, which, by the way, was a huge part of marketing, was pre-television, was ads in magazines. And both of these were fear based, that you have bad breath, halitosis, and that you're dirty, and it's an opportunity to socially elevate yourself, or at least make sure that you're not socially marginalized. Here's a bit more on the tourism side, and what's if you look at the one on the left, it's a comely maiden who actually looks certainly doesn't look like she's impoverished. Guy playing the pipes, and a suggestion that by going on the Great Southern Railways, you'll end up in Tir na Nog, a borrowing of the land of eternal youth. And here's an ad to Ballynahinch Castle. The railway was built there. So what we have then is the emergence of tourism as an aspirational wish, really, of this burgeoning middle class. So they're speaking to fears and they're speaking to dreams. So in a way, what we've been looking at in this program is that in relation to the past, how our lives are affected by triumphs and traumas, but in relation to the future, our lives are affected by our dreams and our fears or our terrors. And we've just seen in these ads how they're marketing very strongly to those emotions. Here we have a bit more on Killarney, presented as heaven, and we have Blarney Castle there, presented as the land of romance. Presumably by kissing the Blarney Stone, I think you get a wish and happy ever after in relation to your love life. Here's a very interesting one, which you would not get away with today. Someone like Pablo would make sure it did not, cocaine would not be permissible. Am I right, Pablo? And Coca-Cola, which we kind of know the secret ingredient, which they will never reveal, had some of this addictive cocaine in it. and again, look at the way this lady on the left is dressed. It's very bourgeois, very upper class, very aspirational. And the suggestion would be that it's a very middle class or upper middle class even to afford a hat and a dress like that and daintily drinking tea. She's the type of person who can afford roses, is the kind of person who's associated with Coca-Cola. And then on the right, it sounds like we have some sort of snake oil stuff where we're talking about these medicinal or kind of things you'd buy in a pharmacy that again contain cocoa nib, which sounds like an ingredient with cocaine in it. So we also have the emergence of makeup for the first time, and Pond's skin cream, and a rather fierce-looking lady who we learn is the Queen of Romania. And this is an ad in Women's Home Companion of January 1927. And we learn that the Queen of Romania was a user of these products. And then makeup for the first time, glamour and beauty is part of what was emergent. And fashion. And so what we have here, as you can see, is these upper middle class ladies with very long skirts. So presumably our friend McQuaid and Dev wouldn't have had any problems because virtually everything is covered up. Yeah, so Joyce also talks about stuff that wouldn't be in formal advertising, but was a continual source of pleasure, like racy ads, naughty postcards, which illicit drinks, those kind of things. So in a way, what we have here is a very different, emergent, consumer-based society emerging at a time that you have the very contradictory influences of the McQuaids and the De Valeras. I'm not going to talk about it here, but obviously one of the big things that there would have been at the time was very heavy censorship, and films and books. And indeed, it's most unlikely that the good citizens of Dublin in the 20s and 30s had access to Ulysses because of things like the Molly Bloom soliloquy at the end, which is a nice little bit of soft erotic porn. There's no doubt that McQuaid might have enjoyed reading it and probably rereading it and then looked through his binoculars or telescope, but there's absolutely no chance that it would have been read. So while Ulysses wasn't mass consumption, it wasn't a bestseller at all. But I do think the focus that James Joyce brings to the impact of popular culture in speaking to our desires and our fears was hugely influential. So just to sum up, what we've essentially got is in a way, the dominant force was this very hierarchical form of Catholicism that, while it gave security, was at a cost which Joyce would have described as paralysis. The country was paralyzed and trapped. There were other emergent influences which Joyce is talking to, that is the power of advertising and popular culture right through Ulysses, and as indicated by who he's made his main protagonist, Leopold. And then the third area is obviously the Yeatsian, Joycean high culture, and going to the Abbey and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to bring out the three dominant forces and influences in terms of the attempt to build the Irish nation. Now, one of the things that is also worth considering is the extent to which these ads are, and I think Veronica brought it up, but basically where these ads are more adoption. Is this a new form of colonialism, or is it possible within the ads to claim a unique Irishness? And I know, Donal, in your work, quite a lot of it was working with the use of the Irish language in relation. Donal did a big project on the use of the Irish language in relation to the naming of the big state and semi-state bodies using Irish terms, like, well, it was An Forest Talunte for the Agricultural Institute. So there were, but I think that's another day's work that we might look at down the road, which is the extent to which the popular culture and advertising and TV is another form of colonialism, or whether it's an opportunity to decolonize and shake off the influence of perfidious Albion. So.